Why are even America's closest allies turning against it? From Canada to Europe to Asia, cracks are forming in relationships that have defined global security for decades. So what's going on? Is it policy, personality, or something deeper? Let's break it down in today's video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of our deep dives into what's shaping our world. To understand why America's allies are rethinking their relationships, we first need to look at why these alliances exist in the first place. After World War II, the United States emerged as a global superpower. It built a network of alliances. Think NATO in Europe, treaties with Japan, South Korea, and others in Asia, and partnerships in the Middle East and Latin America. These alliances were based on mutual defense, shared values like democracy, and economic cooperation. The U.S. offered protection, military support, and access to its massive economy. In return, allies provided military bases, diplomatic support, and a united front against adversaries like the Soviet Union during the Cold War. This system worked for decades. It created what some call the liberal international order, a world where democracy, free trade, and international law were championed, with the U.S. as the leader. But fast forward to 2025, and things are looking shaky. Allies aren't just questioning America's leadership, they're actively pulling away. So what's changed? One word: Trump. Since Donald Trump's return to the White House in 2025, his America First approach has sent shockwaves through the international community. Now, let's be clear. Trump isn't the sole reason for the strain, but his policies and rhetoric have amplified tensions. From day one, his administration has taken a hard-line stance, not just against rivals like China, but against allies like Canada, Mexico, and European nations. Let's break down some examples. First, tariffs. Trump imposed a 25% tariff on Canada and Mexico, two of America's closest neighbors and trading partners. He's also hit South Korea, Japan, and Germany with auto tariffs, disrupting supply chains and fueling anger. Canada's Prime Minister Mark Carney called these tariffs a direct attack. South Korea's trade minister warned of significant challenges for their auto industry, which exports billions to the U.S. These aren't just economic moves. They're seen as betrayals by countries that have stood by America for decades. Then there's the rhetoric. Trump's threats to annex Canada, seize Greenland from Denmark, or take control of the Panama Canal have rattled allies. These might sound like offhand comments, but for nations like Canada, which shares the world's longest undefended border with the U.S., it's a wake-up call. Trust, as political scientist Deborah Welch Larson says, is hard to build and easy to destroy. And right now, America's allies are losing trust fast. And it's not just talk. Trump's decision to halt defense aid and intelligence sharing with Ukraine in March 2025, only restoring it after Ukraine agreed to a truce on Russia's terms, sent a chilling message. America might not have your back when it counts. For NATO allies like Estonia or Finland, this raises serious questions about whether the U.S. would honor its commitments under Article 5, the clause that says an attack on one NATO member is an attack on all. Now let's look at the other side. Trump and his supporters argue that America's allies have been free-riding, relying on U.S. military power without paying their fair share. And there's some truth to this. The U.S. spends about 3% of its GDP on defense, far more than most NATO allies, many of whom fall below the 2% guideline. Trump's been vocal about this, even threatening to pull U.S. troops from Germany or South Korea if they don't step up. Take Canada, for example. Vice President J.D. Vance pointed out on X that Canada isn't meeting its NATO spending targets and isn't doing enough to stop the flow of drugs across the border. Trump's team sees this as allies taking advantage of America's generosity. Richard Goldberg, a former National Security Council member, said it's about showing allies that the days of taking America for granted are over. But here's the catch: bullying allies might push them away instead of bringing them closer. Allies are responding. Canada's made a $4.2 billion deal with Australia for radar systems and is talking to the EU about military cooperation. Portugal and other NATO nations are reconsidering buying American F-35 jets, worried about U.S. control over parts and software. This isn't just about money. It's about allies feeling like they need to Trump-proof their defenses. The bigger picture here is a shifting global order. For decades, America's unmatched power meant allies had little choice but to stick with Washington. But as U.S. dominance wanes and rivals like China and Russia grow bolder, allies are hedging their bets. Europe, for instance, is investing in its own defense industry, wary of relying on American weapons. Countries like India are strengthening ties with both the U.S. and China, playing both sides to maximize leverage. This trend, called hedging, is becoming more common. Turkey and Thailand, for example, are cozying up to Russia and China while still maintaining ties with the U.S. Why? Because they see America as less reliable. As one EU diplomat put it, we need to strike a path that works without Washington. That's a huge shift from the days when the U.S. was seen as the indispensable nation. And let's not forget the moral dimension. Trump's remarks about turning Gaza into a Mideast Riviera or siding with Russia over Ukraine have led allies to question whether America still stands for democracy and international law. For many, the U.S. is starting to look like just another great power, not a moral leader. That's it for today's deep dive. What do you think? Are America's allies right to pull away, or is the U.S. justified in demanding more? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and let's keep the conversation going. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, share it with a friend, and subscribe for more content like this. Until next time, stay curious, and I'll see you in the next video.